The Grand Council chamber was always too clean, too polished, too safe. Polished marble floors reflected the pale glow of crystalline lamps. Rows of alien representatives sat in perfect semicircles, their robes brushing against polished stone. The air was thick with pheromones, vocal harmonics, chemical whispers, all the subtle languages of 1,000 species. But beneath it all, there was something else. Fear. Kazara Knox, senior xenobiological researcher, could taste it. Her membranes pulsed faintly, registering the sharp tang of anxiety that floated through the chamber, and it was directed at one species. Humans. First speaker Vorlat, a tall insectoid whose carapace gleamed like obsidian, raised his staff and struck the resonance plate. The deep, sonorous tone silenced the chamber. His trilling voice followed. The solution is obvious. We simply ban all human weapons. The room stirred. Relief pheromones spread like perfume. Nictitating membranes flickered in approval. Knox's stomach sank. She knew what was coming. On her right, second speaker Juran Pax leaned forward, her translucent skin flashing contempt colors as she spoke. The humans are unpredictable. Their weapons multiply like spores. Their creativity is a threat. This council cannot allow such instability. The chamber pulsed with agreement. Knox rose, her voice amplified through the acoustic enhancers. With respect, banning their weapons will not make them less dangerous. Humans are. Researcher, Pax cut her off, the Council has already consulted military strategists. Disarmament is the only logical path. Vorlat slammed the resonance plate again. The motion passes. Effective immediately, all human weapons are prohibited within Council space. Knox slumped back into her seat. The chamber was sweet with relief, sweet and utterly blind. Idiots, she thought, you have no idea what you've just unleashed. 3 cycles later, the human diplomatic vessel New Horizon glided into dock. Knox was there because of course she was. Bureaucracy loved irony, make the one scientist who disagreed deliver the bad news. Inside, she faced Marcus Jenner, Earth's representative. A lean man, dark hair streaked with gray, eyes sharp but calm. She explained the Council's decision. The ban, the surrender of all human weapons. When she finished, Jenner was silent. No flickering membranes, no chemical scent, just those flat, unreadable human eyes. Finally, he spoke. So, he said slowly, the Galactic Council feels threatened, and they've banned every weapon we carry. Yes, all of them. All energy projectors, explosives, propellants, blades, anything designed for combat. Jenner's mouth twisted into a smile, but it wasn't warm. And our ships, mining drills, construction tools. Exempt, classified as essential. How generous. He tapped his device. Tell the Council we accept. We'll begin disarmament immediately. Knox's chest tightened. Too easy, too quick. You're not going to protest? Jenner's smile spread to his eyes. Cold, dangerous. Why would we? We're adaptable, Doctor, very adaptable. Knox's danger receptors pulsed. She should have trusted them. Outpost Gamma 9. 3 lunar cycles later, Knox stood in the research bay of a trading station near human-controlled space. Gamma 9 was a crossroads, a swirl of merchants, envoys, and scavengers. That's when the alarms blared. Security breach in docking section 4, the AI announced in 17 languages. Knox pulled up the feeds. Krell pirates, scorpion-bodied brutes with plasma cutters. Station guards with ceremonial shock staves were already faltering. Then she saw them. Humans, traders by their clothes, trapped in the docking bay, unarmed, defenseless. Or so she thought. The lead Krell shoved forward, mandibles clicking, weapon raised. A human woman with cropped hair stepped out, hands lifted in surrender. The Krell laughed, lowering his weapon. And the human moved. Her hands snapped down, twisting the disruptor away. Her knee smashed into a joint where the Krell's armor was weakest. With a roar, she flipped the alien over her shoulder and slammed him into the deck hard enough to crack carapace. The bay erupted. A heavy-set human drove his fist into a Krell's sensory cluster, dropping it in one blow. Another swept his leg low, knocking a pirate sprawling. A smaller figure leapt onto a Krell's back, arms wrapping tight around its neck until the creature sagged unconscious. Knox's mandibles hung open. 5 Krell, armed with plasma cutters, reduced to twitching bodies in under 2 minutes. When security finally arrived, the humans were calmly checking each other for injuries. The officer demanded, "What happened here? Our scans showed you had no weapons." The short-haired human flexed her fingers. "The council banned our weapons," she smiled. "They never said anything about our hands." Nox felt a chill ripple down her exoskeleton. The council had made a terrible mistake. Hook ending of Part 1. In her quarters later, Nox scrolled through human historical records. "Computer," she whispered, "list all human unarmed combat methods." Currently cataloged, 3,876 distinct systems, estimated 10,000 regional and temporal variations. The screen filled with names: boxing, judo, wrestling, Krav Maga, Muay Thai, Wing Chun, Jiu-Jitsu, Taekwondo, Capoeira, endless lists. Techniques to choke, strike, throw, break. Nox leaned back, her primary heart racing. The council thought they had disarmed humanity. In truth, they had just forced humans to fall back on the oldest, deadliest weapons of all. Their bodies, their minds, their hands. The council chamber smelled of triumph. Sweet pheromones, glimmering light patterns, satisfied hums. It was the scent of officials congratulating themselves. Kazara Nox, however, could only smell rot. She stood at the presentation podium, her research displayed behind her. The footage from Gamma 9 looped, humans dismantling Krell pirates with nothing but their bodies. Efficient, brutal, terrifying. "Not a greater threat," she said carefully, "but certainly not a diminished one." Second speaker Jurun Pax waved a delicate appendage, dripping contempt. "Researcher Nox would have us believe these soft-bodied bipeds pose more danger now than when they carried plasma rifles." A ripple of laughter, glands flashing amusement colors. Nox fought the urge to curl her sensory stalks. "Not more danger," she countered, "but unchanged. You sought to neutralize them. Instead, you've simply shifted the battlefield. Humans don't require weapons to fight. They've spent millennia training their bodies as weapons." Vorlat, towering at the dais, gave a dismissive trill. "One isolated pirate incident does not justify alarm." Nox stabbed her control pad. "Computer, display incidents Alpha through Delta." The hologram shifted, more footage. A human merchant breaking a Vex thief's arm in a marketplace. A human aide choking an intoxicated Brack warrior, unconscious in a cultural center. 2 human engineers repelling scavengers aboard a repair outpost. A lone human female escaping 3 Jorax hunters, leaving them writhing in the dirt. 26 documented cases in the last cycle, Nox pressed. All without weapons, all victorious. The chamber grew restless. Murmurs, chemical flutters of unease. Military coordinator Dren, a hulking Torvax with reinforced exoskeleton, leaned forward. His glowing patches flared with irritation. "I refuse to believe these creatures, without armor or claws, can defeat trained warriors. No simulation could support such claims." Nox didn't hesitate. "Computer, display Torvax human combat scenario A." The hologram shifted again. A Torvax model towered over a human silhouette. Red markers bloomed across the alien anatomy, joints, optical sensors, breathing slits. 17 critical vulnerabilities, Nox explained. Human strikes can rupture joint capsules. Throws can exploit your top-heavy balance. Your species' greatest strength, size becomes its weakness. The chamber fell silent for a heartbeat. Then Dren roared, bioluminescent fury flaring across his chest. No soft-fleshed primate could bring down a Torvax warrior. "Perhaps a demonstration," Nox began. "Enough," Vorlat slammed the resonance plate. The chamber vibrated with authority. "This council will not entertain spectacles of physical confrontation. Researcher Nox, your findings are noted but unnecessary. Integration proceeds smoothly. The weapons ban stands." Nox's hearts pounded. They were blind and smug. Then Director Sefloon of the Cultural Division, a willowy Nathian whose skin shimmered in calming hues, rose. "Perhaps we should not dismiss the researchers' data outright. A cultural exchange is scheduled on Nexus Station. We could add a martial exhibition. Let the humans demonstrate their arts. Controlled, harmless. It may ease tensions." Vorlat tilted his head, patronizing agreement. "Yes, let them dance for us. It will prove they are harmless curiosities." The chamber rippled with relief. Nox swallowed her frustration. It was better than nothing, barely. She would attend, and she would see. Nexus Station. The station was a glittering wheel against the void, its vast ring spinning to provide gravity. Inside, it buzzed with preparation, hundreds of species arriving for the grand cultural exchange. Displays of art, music, cuisine, technology, and now, thanks to Nox, combat demonstrations. She arrived early, credentials granting her access to the human preparation wing. A voice called her name. Researcher Nox, yes. She turned. A human male approached, tall, dark-skinned, clean-shaven head. His simple gray attire gave no rank, yet he carried himself with confidence. His eyes, sharp and assessing, unsettled her. Marcus Bailey, he said, extending his hand. Earth's cultural attaché for martial arts. Nox hesitated, then clasped his hand. The grip was firm, deliberate, controlled strength. You are the Council's human biologist, correct? I am, Nox admitted. Bailey smiled, not predatory, but knowing. Then you already understand what most here refuse to. Nox's danger receptors pulsed. The human team. Bailey led her into the human training chamber. 8 specialists stretched, sparred, moved with impossible grace. A compact woman demonstrated judo, throwing a partner twice her size. A wiry man snapped through taekwondo kicks, cracking the air. A quiet youth moved through fluid Wing Chun forms, redirecting strikes with ghost-like precision. A massive man, hands like forged iron, practiced grappling throws with terrifying ease. Nox's membranes quivered. This wasn't performance, this was efficiency. These are just 8, Bailey explained casually. Thousands exist, each one built to solve a different problem. Armed enemies, larger enemies, many enemies. Do all humans learn these? Nox asked. Bailey chuckled. No, most don't, but the knowledge is there, and when needed, we adapt. His smile sharpened. We always adapt. The demonstration. The arena filled with representatives from dozens of species. The format was simple. Each culture displayed their martial traditions, followed by sparring. The Zenturi danced with ritual blades, beautiful, stylized, but ceremonial. The Drax grappled, relying on brute size. The Vididarians twirled shock staves in precise, artistic patterns. Then came the humans. First, synchronized forms, rows of humans moving in unison, strikes, blocks, kicks flowing like a storm. Then individual feats, judo throws, boards shattered with kicks, blades stripped from attackers' hands. The crowd murmured, first curious, then uneasy. Finally, the sparring. Master Victor Novik of Earth, the announcer called, versus War Chief Gratter of the Drax Confederation. The Drax towered over Novik, 3 meters of muscle and armor plates. The human looked small, ordinary. At the signal, Gratter lunged, massive arms grasping. Novik slipped aside, locked a limb, and with fluid precision used the alien's momentum. The giant crashed onto the mat, rattling the arena. Silence. Gratter roared, charging again. Novik flowed behind him, wrapping thick arms around the alien's throat in a chokehold. 4 seconds later, the war chief collapsed to his knees, gasping. The silence deepened. The announcer's voice quavered. A demonstration of technique. Thank you, participants. The crowd shifted uneasily. Amusement had turned to shock. Match after match, the humans held back and still dominated. A Varian shockstaff master thrown down effortlessly. A Zenturi blade dancer disarmed mid-spin. Even a floating hoplick dropped from the air by a perfectly timed strike. By the end, the chamber no longer smelled of curiosity. It smelled of fear. Part 2 cliffhanger. After the event, Nox slipped through the crowd. She caught Bailey watching her from across the arena. He nodded once, his gaze steady. He knew exactly what had happened. The Council had wanted a harmless display. Instead, they had revealed the truth. Humans weren't curiosities. They were predators in plain sight. And they hadn't even tried. Nexus Station never truly slept. Even at station night, when the circadian lamps dimmed and the promenade drones whispered their lullabies, you could still feel the pulse. Recyclers thumping behind bulkheads, shuttle couplings clacking, the faint electric breath of a city hung from a ring. Kazera Nox had never felt so awake. She replayed the demonstration feeds in her suite until the pixel edges blurred. Human hips turning like hinges, shoulders soft as water until the last inch of a strike hardened to iron. A throw begun with a step hardly anyone noticed. A choke applied with the mercy of a surgeon and the finality of a guillotine. She annotated, cross-referenced, paused on angles most species didn't even possess. Each time she expected the fear to subside. It didn't. She drafted a memorandum to the council. No flourish, no heat, just the clean lines of data. The weapons ban has not reduced human tactical capability in close quarters. Human training shows deliberate design to neutralize armed, larger, or multi-limbed opponents. The ban incentivizes scenario dominance within restricted environments, ships, corridors, stations. Recommendation: pause enforcement, audit risk models, initiate joint training transparency. She sent it at 03:11 station time. The receipt came back with a polite stamp and no comment. 2 hours later, her door announced a visitor with a chime toned for diplomatic tier. She opened it to Marcus Bailey's silhouette against the corridor glow. "You don't sleep, researcher," he said. "Neither do you," Knox replied, membranes dim with fatigue. He smiled faintly. "Walk." They took the long spiral toward an observation blister. The stars flooded in with an almost liquid clarity, the wheel of the station throwing a slow procession of light over his face. Up close, Knox noticed a faint webbing of scar tissue at the base of his right thumb, old damage, healed with ugly honesty. "I sent a memorandum," Knox said softly. "They'll bury it." "They'll read it," Bailey said, hands clasped behind him, "and then do nothing until they can't do nothing anymore." That is not reassuring. It's descriptive. He turned his head. "You saw their eyes after the choke on the Drax. That wasn't all. It was arithmetic. They're measuring us against themselves." Knox's chewing plates clicked together once, a Nathian sign of agreement she had adopted from long years among them. "If they measure wrong, we all bleed." "Then help them measure right," Bailey said, gaze sliding back to the stars. "Keep doing what you're doing." His tone made it sound simple. Nothing was simple. The message. She returned to her suite to find her console pulsing with a low priority. No, disguised, notification. A maintenance bulletin from a research platform she'd never serviced. Embedded inside the innocuous text was a frequency pattern only a security clearance above hers should recognize. Zenith 12, Lab Chemistry, 3rd rotation. 2nd phase, private consultation, XCNOBIO urgency. She ran a dozen verifications. The signature checked out, the routing smelled clean, the time was tight, too tight. It could be nothing, it could be everything, it could be a trap. Knox scraped her membranes with a towel and stared at her reflection. In the old days, before she'd learned human patience, she would have marched into Vorlat's office and demanded sponsorship. Now she just breathed, slow and deep, until the tremor in her lower limbs faded. She booked passage on a cargo shuttle under a standard research pretext and told no one. Not even Marcus Bailey. Zenith 12. Zenith 12 was a spindle with delusions of grandeur. A thin axial spine, 6 laboratory drums like seed pods, and a docking collar that looked chewed by micrometeoroids. The approach vector swung her over a skeletal array of spectrometers aimed at the sun of an uninhabited system, useful cover for any kind of experiment you didn't want neighbors for. Her shuttle latched with a hollow clang. The docking ring's atmosphere was too dry, her membranes stung with the chemical bite of bleached air. A single technician met her, young, eyes down, name badge flipped backward by accident. He led her through an umbilical into lab chemistry, the door irised with a hiss. 4 beings were already inside. Military Coordinator Dren loomed like a ridgeline of iron, Torvax, skin-sheen plates polished to a mirror, bioluminescent patches damped into neutrality. Trade Commissioner Vix, a hoplick, bobbed on his grav disc, gas bladders calm and pale, monocular gaze impossible to read. A Xanthi security specialist stood lean and jointless by the rear console, limbs folded like braided rope. The 4th Knox knew only from files, a Krell scientist whose mandibles clicked with the tiny impatience of predators forced to talk. "Researcher," Dren said, voice like gravel under weight, "your punctuality is appreciated." "I was told there is xenobiological urgency," Knox answered carefully. "There is," the Krell chittered, "humans." The lab table awoke with a soft light. A holosheet unfurled like frost over glass, charts, flow diagrams, jurisdiction maps, enforcement trees. Words slotted into the air, softened by euphemism, harmonization protocol, weaponless compliance, physiological parity measures. Nox read completely still. Her primary heart made 2 heavy beats, then a third. Restricted colonization radii. Additional customs latency for human carriers. Activity flags on training facilities. Mandatory registries. Encouraged resettlement away from critical nodes, and the worst, buried under 3 layers of pleasant obfuscation, atmospheric amendments for cross-species comfort keyed to human endocrine resilience. "You intend to drug them," she said, voice coming out flatter than she planned. "Balancing," Vix breathed, drifting half a body length closer. "We seek to normalize physiological outliers to protect markets and life." The Xanthi clicked their tongue. "Containment prevents confrontation." Nox folded her 4 primary arms and let the silence simmer. "And when containment fails, what then?" Dren's bioluminescence pulsed once, sour light. "Then we pursue escalations appropriate to threat." The polite word for disappearance, for selective accidents, for attrition you could deny with a straight mouth. "You're proposing suppression under the guise of safety," Nox said. "It is illegal, it is immoral, and it will not work." "Your assessment is noted," Vix said. "We require your expertise to ensure it does work ethically." Nox almost laughed. "There is no ethical way to do this." The Krell's mandibles rasped. "Researcher Nox, your files demonstrate admirable clarity. You understand human endurance, heat tolerance, pain thresholds, grip. We would like you to help us design counterweights." She let the word hang between them like a rotten fruit. "You want me to find their weaknesses so you can press them in the dark." The Xanthi's joints uncoiled, the only sign of irritation. "We want stability." Nox looked at the diagrams again. The lines were elegant, the cascade of measures plotted to apply weight without leaving bruises. Behind the elegance she heard footsteps, marching. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, she felt very old. "You will have my analysis," she said. "I need 2 cycles and extensive cross-species baselines." Dren's mouth didn't smile, but something in his posture eased. 2 cycles, deliverables encrypted for this node." He gestured. The holosheet folded itself neatly into a crystal. "Non-disclosure is absolute. Any leak will be prosecuted." "Of course," Nox said. "I am a researcher." It was not a lie. It was not the truth they thought. As she left, the young technician kept his eyes on the floor. But when the umbilical door closed behind her, he glanced up, just for a breath, long enough to flash a tiny human gesture he must have learned from cargo crews. Thumb and forefinger squeezed together, a circle. "Okay." Nox didn't answer. She walked until the deck plating rang hollow and the dry air tasted like paper. The choice. The shuttle's autopilot carried her away from Zenith 12 on a slow, non-provocative arc. She stared at the crystal in her hand until its edges imprinted her palm. If she did nothing, the protocol would slither forward under pilot programs and quality-of-life adjustments. 1,000 cuts, all justified. If she went through council channels, Vorlat's office would bury it under committee paper, and Jurun Pax would accuse her of human favoritism. If she told the humans, she would be a traitor. She thought about Gamma 9, a human hand closing around a Krell's wrist like a theorem about leverage. She thought about the Drax chief on the mat, alive because a human had decided breath was a better lesson than bone. They were dangerous. They were also, by every metric that mattered, trying. Nox slotted the crystal into a dead compartment in her shuttle bulkhead and rerouted to a planet no one visited by choice. Terrace IV. Terrace was a half-warmed rock in a red sun's chill slipstream, its air thin and acrid, its soil a scab covered with machines. Terraformers hummed across the plains like sleeping giants, intake towers, catalytic skeins strung between pylons, vapor columns twisting into a pale sky. The only sentient presences lived inside sealed stations where the air was always too new, too clean, too untrustworthy. She chose an atmospheric processing plant 300 kilometers from the nearest settlement. Old station, tall core, good sensor coverage, too many maintenance shafts, perfect for murder. She arrived early. She swept the place twice, then a third time, until the floor plan was a skin inside her head. She set a signal jammer under a console with a lip so the scanned shadow looked like a harmless weld bubble. She inhaled and tasted only scrubbed oxygen and the ghost of solvent. When Marcus Bailey stepped through the airlock exactly on time, she knew he would. Everything about him said practiced rhythm. "You called," he said. "You came. You sound surprised." "I am," she admitted. "I may be dragging you into something that ends us both." He looked around the big core room, ducts rising like organ pipes, catwalks webbed across the high space. Places like this always make me think humankind and spiders share an ancestor. She handed him the crystal. He didn't plug it into anything. He didn't even hold it as if it were fragile. He just put it in a pocket close to his ribs and looked at her. "Tell me." She told him not everything. There were names she would not speak aloud yet, but enough. The gentle tyranny of parody, the registry masks, the endocrine edits, the escalation pathways hidden under budget euphemisms. As she spoke, the stillness around Bailey changed. Not tensing, he didn't bunch. He thinned, focused. "Proof?" he asked when she finished. "You're wearing it," she said. He tapped the pocket once. Motivation. Fear, profit, control, and she let the word curdle, stability. He breathed out through his nose. "We'll need to move quickly, quietly. This can't become a headline before it becomes a case." "I agree," Knox said. "I think some of them want a headline. It would justify measures." He nodded, then wait. The facility's proximity alarm coughed to life. Not the smooth chime of a scheduled arrival, the jagged, misclocked bellow of a hard burn and a bad code. Knox's membranes flared crimson. She sprinted for the nearest terminal and slammed a palm onto the override. The board vomited telemetry, 6 shuttles on a steep descent, transponders fuzzed, IFF dancing, approach vectors like thrown knives. Bailey was already moving. How many bodies? She peeled back the filters with her clearance and let the sensors taste the steel. 24, mixed species, Zenturi security uniforms, Krell heat signatures. Armed. Rifles, cutters, disruptors, yes. His eyes flicked to the high catwalks, to the ducts, to the vent arrays. Knox could practically hear him mapping the place. He touched his comms. "Horizon, this is Bailey. Black flag, my coordinates." Static answered, then a clipped voice under the gravel of atmospheric noise. "Copy, jamming heavy, 28 minutes at best." "Understood," Bailey said, already walking toward a side corridor. "We won't be here that long." Knox's thoracic cavity felt too small for her hearts. "They traced my message." "Or they traced me," he said lightly. "Or someone decided to accelerate a timeline once your shuttle left Zenith 12. Doesn't matter. We can't defend this room." "Where then?" He pointed at her map, not even looking up at the screen. "You know the guts. You drive the environment. I'll do the rest." "Marcus," she said, and surprised herself with the use of his given name. "They have rifles." "The council banned ours," he said, and for the first time she saw his smile without any diplomacy in it. It showed teeth and history. "They didn't ban gravity or doors or coolant or fear." The main airlock boomed under fist and torch. Metal sang. Knox rooted power away from the locking mechanism and into the opposite corridor. She flooded the far hall lights and dimmed the near ones. She closed 3 doors and opened 2 others, making a crooked path like a lie. "Tell me when they split," Bailey said, flexing his hands as if waking old bones. "Now," she said, 3 groups, 7, 8, 9. "Good." He took the small maintenance kit from beneath the console without asking permission, thumbed a thin tool free, and palmed a coil of fiber like it was a thread of fate. "Make the floor slick in corridor C19 at my mark. Bleed the heat in shaft 7 by 15 degrees when I say." "You're asking me to turn the station into a weapon." "I'm asking you to turn it into a teacher." The airlock gave way with a shriek. Boots, some clawed, some padded, hit the decking in a scatter pattern she recognized from security drills. The first Zenturi flared their lamps and saw a path lit clean and bright, inviting them deeper. Knox tasted the dry air again and found something new in it, metallic and human. Resolve. "Let's move," Bailey said. They slipped into the service crawl, vanished under the catwalks, and became part of the machine. Outside, the first squad's leader clicked a command and raised his rifle. Bailey's voice was almost lazy in Knox's ear. "C19, now." She vented a film of recycled condensate across the decking. The first Zenturi's foot shot out from under him. He went down with a bark, rifle clattering, his squad bunching, momentum broken. Bailey ghosted out of a shadow like a defect no inspector would ever find. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't need one. Knox watched, breath held, as his hands found the rifle's barrel and turned it harmless, as his elbow found a breathing slit and closed it like a door, as his knee found a joint and made the floor the enemy. 2 went down, then 3, then the Krell in the rear lost his footing on the slick and smashed his mandibles against a bulkhead. 7 by 15, Bailey murmured. Knox dumped cold into the shaft. The fog rolled out in a pale wave, turning the world to milk. Shapes moved inside it, human and not, fast, precise, inevitable. Her console flared. The second squad had cut right, hunting for a flank, their boots ringing on ladder rungs. The third had gone slow and careful, methodical, professionals. "Marcus," she said, "we have." "I see them," he said calmly. Metal chimed in the fog. A body landed somewhere with a crunch that made her plates ache. Then the third squad did something that made her stomach go stone cold. They broke formation and began to circle back toward the core, toward her. "Company," she started. "I'm coming," he said. "No time," she snapped, throwing a door and deadlocking another, buying seconds she could count on one hand. Footfalls drove like nails through the floor above her head. Air hissed around the seal of the maintenance hatch behind her. Her jammer spat sparks and died. The station's wideband lit up like a scream. A new signal cut across everything, clean, strong, official. Unregistered operation detected. By order of the Joint Security Office, all units stand down and identify. Knox stared at the origin code. It was Council, it was real. The hatch behind her spun and jumped. Something hammered it from the other side. "Marcus," she whispered, "they're here." The hatch wheel made one more desperate turn, and the metal iris began to open. The hatch iris screeched open. Knox's membranes flared red, a survival reflex. 3 Zenturi stormed through, thin, tall, their skin bioluminescent under the emergency lamps. Behind them lumbered 2 Krell plasma cutters whining. The lead Zenturi barked, "Surrender, you are outnumbered, there is no escape." Knox froze, her hearts pounded against her thoracic cavity. She had no weapon, no plan, just her console and a comm crackling with static. Then Marcus Bailey appeared. He slid from the fog like he had been born of it, every movement clean, efficient. He didn't run, he didn't even hurry, he flowed. The first Krell raised his cutter. Bailey caught the wrist mid-swing, twisted, and slammed the alien's mandibles into the bulkhead. The cutter clattered free. Bailey didn't take it. He spun the Krell into the second, using one enemy's bulk to crush the other against the hatch frame. The Zenturi fired shock rifles. Bailey dropped low, rolled forward, and the bolts sizzled into the Krell bodies instead. The big aliens convulsed and collapsed in a smoking heap. Knox stared. He turned their own weapons against them without even touching the triggers. Bailey surged up into the Zenturi line. His elbow crushed a throat. His knee shattered a knee joint. His palm strike collapsed a breathing tube. In less than 12 seconds, 5 attackers lay twitching on the deck. Bailey exhaled once, steady, then glanced back. "You good?" Knox swallowed hard. "Define good." He smirked, but his eyes stayed cold. Predatory. "Stay on the console," heard them. Turning the station into a weapon. Knox's claws danced across her terminal. Second squad is moving through coolant junctions. Third is sweeping the western corridor. If they converge, we're finished. "Split them," Bailey said. "Give me one at a time." Knox sealed doors, vented airlocks, and rerouted power until the squad stumbled into choke points. She flooded one corridor with steam, another with icy coolant vapor. The station became a labyrinth of illusions. The feeds showed confused squads breaking apart, isolated, exactly what Bailey wanted. She whispered into the comm, "North maintenance shaft, single Krell separated." "On it." The feed caught Bailey's silhouette dropping from a pipe overhead. One arm snaked around the Krell's throat, the other locked its weapon arm. A jerk, a twist, and the alien collapsed. Bailey dragged the body into shadow, vanished again. Another feed, a Zenturi, slipped on the coolant-slick floor. Bailey's foot lashed out, a strike to the base of the skull. Instant unconsciousness. Another 3 attackers clustered together, rifles raised. Bailey triggered a suppression system. Foam blasted from ceiling vents, blinding them. He struck from the fog, hands blurring, and when the foam cleared, all three were down. Knox's membranes pulsed violet with fear and awe. One human against trained and armed soldiers, and he is winning. Closing in. But the attackers were learning. The last group, 6 strong, a mix of Krell and Zenturi, moved in tighter formation. They advanced toward the core, weapons raised. Knox locked door after door, but they blasted through with cutters. Sparks showered corridors, the air filled with the metallic tang of ozone and melted steel. "They're cutting straight to me," she whispered. Bailey's voice came back calm. "Good, hold them, I'll meet them there." The hatch to the core chamber shook with each strike. Knox backed away from the console, her limbs trembling. She was a scientist, not a fighter. Her instincts screamed to run, to hide, but there was nowhere to go. The hatch blew inward. 6 figures stormed in. Krell mandibles clattered, Zenturi rifles hummed. Knox raised her arms instinctively, knowing it was useless. The Zenturi leader sneered. "Surrender, researcher, you are classified, the human dies here." Bailey stepped from the shadows. Unarmed calm. "This is your last chance," the Zenturi warned, weapon aimed square at his chest. "Comply and your death will be painless." Bailey tilted his head. That faint, terrible smile touched his mouth. "You've already made 3 mistakes." The aliens hesitated. Weapons wavered. "What?" Bailey moved. "Brutality." He snatched a small maintenance tool from his pocket, a spanner, and hurled it at the overhead lighting panel. Sparks cascaded, plunging half the room into darkness. By the time the aliens blinked, Bailey was inside their line. His fist hammered into a Krell's breathing slit. The alien collapsed with a wet rattle. He pivoted, hooked a Zenturi's rifle with his forearm, twisted, and used the weapon itself to throw the alien into another. Both hit the deck in a tangle. The second Krell swung its cutter wildly. Bailey stepped in, jammed an elbow into the joint, and wrenched. The cutter flew. The Krell screamed as Bailey drove his knee into its mandibles, dropping it cold. 2 Zenturi remained, rifles up. Bailey grabbed the fallen Krell, dragged its bulk into their line of fire. Shock bolts hammered its carcass. Bailey surged forward, slammed one Zenturi into the wall, then locked the other in a chokehold so fast Knox almost missed it. 4 seconds later, both were unconscious. Bailey stood amid the wreckage, chest rising steady. He dropped the limp Zenturi to the floor and glanced back at Knox. "All clear." Knox's throat clicked dryly. "That was not possible." "It was necessary," Bailey said, his tone flat. He crouched, checked pulses, then looked up. "Non-lethal, they'll wake up humiliated, not dead, but the Council needs evidence." The realization. Knox's console pinged. Her membranes pulsed with alarm as the incoming message decrypted. It was Council clearance, real clearance. "Attention, unregistered operation detected on Terrace IV. Suspects, Zenturi and Krell units. Orders, capture alive if possible." Her heart stuttered. The Council itself was disavowing the ambush. Bailey rose, wiping coolant streaks from his hands. "They'll spin it, say it was rogue elements, scapegoats." Knox nodded numbly. "You knew this would happen." He didn't deny it. "Not this soon, but I knew." She stared at him. "Who are you really?" For a moment, Bailey's eyes softened. Then the Predator was back. "Let's just say I used to use my hands for a living." The chamber shook. A new alarm blared. Knox turned to the console, read the feed, and her membranes flared crimson. "Marcus," she whispered. "Another shuttle, not Zenturi, not Krell. This one's Council military, 40 signatures, heavily armed." Bailey's jaw tightened. "Then this isn't just a rogue hit squad." Knox's voice cracked. "It's the Council itself." Part 4 cliffhanger. The outer hatch boomed as the new squad docked. Shock rifles, plasma cutters, grenade signatures. Knox's heart slammed in her chest. "They're coming for both of us." Bailey flexed his hands, knuckles cracking in the dim light. His smile was all brutality now. "Then let's show them," he said quietly. "Why banning our weapons was the dumbest decision they ever made." The hatch began to open. The hatch blew open. 40 troops poured through like a flood, Council security, not pirates, not rogues. Their armor gleamed with official insignia. Shock rifles hummed, plasma cutters hissed. They weren't here to arrest. They were here to erase. Knox's membranes pulsed scarlet. It's sanctioned. This is extermination. Bailey didn't flinch. He stepped forward into the roar of boots and metal. "Researcher," he said, voice flat, "kill the lights." Knox slapped the command. The chamber went black. Only the thrum of weapons remained. And then chaos. Ghost in the dark. The first trooper fired blindly. His bolt struck a bulkhead, sparks flaring. In that flash, Bailey was already moving, sliding low, hand snapping out. He seized the rifle, yanked it free, and slammed its butt into the trooper's visor. One down. He didn't keep the rifle. He hurled it across the room, letting its crackle draw fire. Bolts followed it, wasting shots. In the confusion, Bailey vanished into shadow. Another trooper screamed as something fast and brutal smashed into his knee. A pop, a crunch, and the scream cut short. Knox's console flickered with biometric alarms from her scanners. Her heart's hammered. He's dismantling them, one by one. The station as a weapon. Bailey's voice came sharp through the comm. "Vent coolant into corridor B7, now." Knox obeyed. White mist hissed from the vents, flooding the flanking corridor. Troopers coughed, sensors scrambled. Bailey surged from the fog, limbs blurring. A palm strike shattered a throat. A choke spun one trooper unconscious. A joint lock sent another slamming into his comrades. The feed showed armored soldiers, Council's best, falling like children before a storm. Knox couldn't breathe. 1 man against 40, and he's winning. Adaptation. The Council troops tried to adapt. They tightened formations, overlapping fields of fire. They advanced as a wall, rifles sweeping the dark. Bailey changed tactics. He climbed. The ceiling pipes rattled as he moved above them. A trooper glanced up too late. Bailey dropped, driving both feet into the man's chest, snapping his harness. The shock rifle flew. Bailey rolled, spun, and elbowed another trooper's visor until it spiderwebbed. 3 went down in 6 seconds. The formation broke. Brutality. It wasn't clean anymore. Bailey's fists came away wet. His forearms slammed with sickening cracks. He broke a Krell's mandibles with a knee, then hurled the body into another squad. He stomped a Zentury's arm until the rifle dropped, then swung the alien into 2 more like a hammer. The Council's strike team faltered. For every human blow, one of them fell screaming. Knox whispered to herself, voice trembling. The Council wanted to ban human weapons. They forgot the weapons were alive. Cornered, but numbers still mattered. Bailey's breathing grew heavier. His movements slowed. Sweat glistened on his forehead. For every enemy he dropped, 3 more pressed forward. Knox scanned frantically. They'll overwhelm him. "Marcus," she shouted. "South shaft, it leads to the fusion regulators." He dove through the hatch as plasma fire scorched the wall. Knox sealed the door behind him. The feed showed troopers cutting through in pursuit. She scrambled from the console, sprinting after him through the narrow maintenance corridors. Her limbs scraped metal, membranes flaring with panic. She found Bailey crouched by the regulator chamber, chest heaving. His knuckles bled. His uniform was torn, but his eyes still sharp, still ready. "They'll be here in 30 seconds, Knox gasped. Bailey straightened, plenty of time. The last stand. The regulator chamber was a cathedral of steel and light, towers of glowing conduits, walkways suspended above endless drop shafts. The hum of the fusion core vibrated through their bones. The hatch burst open. Council troops swarmed in. Bailey raised his hands, not in surrender, in readiness. The first trooper charged. Bailey sidestepped, seized the arm, and hurled him over the railing. The scream faded into the reactor depths. The others roared and opened fire. Bailey weaved between bolts, close enough that Knox could feel the heat sear past her membranes. He slammed one soldier into a console, shattered another's knee, twisted another into a choke until his body went limp. But they kept coming. Knox saw it now. Bailey couldn't kill them all. He wasn't a machine. He was flesh and bone and endurance. Even he had limits. Her console pinged. She glanced at the regulator readings and froze. The reactor safeties are offline. The Council troops had sabotaged them. This wasn't an arrest. It wasn't even an assassination. It was a purge. They meant to vaporize the entire station, Bailey, Knox, and all evidence of the ambush. The revelation. Knox's membranes pulsed white with horror. "Marcus, they're going to blow the reactor." Bailey snapped a trooper's arm and shoved him aside. "Then stop it." She sprinted to the regulator console, claws flying. Warnings screamed across the display. Safeties overridden, coolant cycles locked, overload in 5 minutes. She worked furiously, but the lockouts were deep, too deep. Not pirate tech, not rogue coding. This was Council encryption. Her hearts went cold. "Marcus," she whispered, "this wasn't the Krell, this wasn't the Zentury. This order came from the Council itself." Bailey glanced back, blood on his knuckles, enemies circling. His smile was sharp and merciless. "Then let's show them what humans do when someone tries to erase us." The regulator alarms rose to a scream. Time was running out. Part 5 cliffhanger. Knox's claws froze over the console. Overload countdown 0432. Troopers closed in, weapons raised. Bailey stood between her and them, fists clenched, body coiled like a predator. "Researcher," he said without looking back, "find a way to shut it down." He cracked his knuckles, blood dripping. "I'll buy you every second." The troopers charged. The reactor core screamed. Warning klaxons pulsed red across every surface, a heartbeat of impending death. 0432 right arrow 0431 right arrow 0430. Knox's membranes flared pale with stress as her claws tore through the console's layered locks. Council encryption, deep, purposeful. They hadn't just sabotaged the safeties, they'd buried them in traps that shredded every override attempt. Behind her, Marcus Bailey fought like the world itself depended on it. Because it did. Holding the line, the first squad rushed him. Bailey met them at the choke point of the regulator platform, a narrow bridge where only 2 could advance at once. He grabbed the lead trooper's rifle and twisted, using it as a lever to flip the soldier over the railing. The man screamed until the fusion chamber swallowed him whole. The second trooper lunged with a plasma cutter. Bailey sidestepped, seized the wrist, and smashed it into the railing until the weapon dropped. A palm strike followed, visor shattered, body limp. The others hesitated. He beckoned them with 2 bloodied fingers. "Come on." Knox heard the rage in their answering roars. 0359. Knox's race. Her claws bled data across the console. "Override attempt 47, failed." Her voice shook. The system countered every line of code she wrote, every patch, every reroute. This wasn't sabotage, it was execution. She slammed her palm down, membranes pulsing with desperation. "Computer, run deep scan, trace origin of override." The console hesitated, then whispered a response in cold neutrality. "Override source, Galactic Council Core Net. Authentication, first speaker authority." Knox's heart stopped, Vorlet himself. 0330. The brutality of survival. Bailey's breathing grew heavier, sweat streaking his face. His movements slowed, but only enough to make each strike more vicious. He drove his knee into one soldier's chest plate, collapsing it inward. He snapped another's arm and used the broken limb as a lever to hurl the man into his comrades. He headbutted a Krell so hard its mandibles cracked like glass. They kept coming, and he kept breaking them. Every motion screamed of endurance, not elegance now, raw human brutality distilled by necessity. Knox caught glimpses through the reflection of the console screen, a blur of fists, blood spraying, armored bodies crumpling. But he was tiring, even she could see that. 0301. Knox's desperation. Knox's claws trembled over the console. Every rational path failed. No patch, no override, no clean way. "Think," she told herself, "humans adapt, so can you." She yanked a diagnostic panel open, exposing coolant feeds. If she couldn't fix the software, maybe she could brute force the physics. Dump enough coolant to choke the core. It was reckless, unstable, dangerous. But less dangerous than nothing. She rerouted pumps, pressure gauges screamed, valves shuddered as she forced them wide. The console warned, system destabilization imminent. "Good," Knox hissed. 0225. Breaking point. Bailey's movements slowed further. His punches landed heavier, his breathing ragged. He stumbled once, just once, and a plasma bolt grazed his shoulder. Knox's membranes flared in alarm. Blood ran down his arm, sizzling against hot metal. But Bailey didn't stop. He roared, a sound that froze the attackers for a heartbeat. Then he surged forward, driving his fist into one soldier's visor until it shattered, teeth scattering across the floor. He grabbed another by the throat and hurled him into the reactor railing, bending steel with the impact. The last two of the squad backed away, rifles shaking. Bailey spat blood, raised his fists, and stepped toward them. They dropped their weapons and fled. Bailey swayed, breathing like a furnace. His hands shook red with blood, his and theirs. He turned his head toward Knox. How long? Knox swallowed. Less than 2 minutes. 01:55. The choice. Her coolant override bought seconds, but not enough. The core rumbled under their feet, vibration rattling her bones. If it breached, the entire station would vaporize. One choice left, one she hated. Marcus, she said, her voice trembling. I can vent the core into the planet's atmosphere. It'll save the station, but the surface will burn. Terraforming will fail. Centuries of work wasted. Do it, he didn't hesitate. Knox's membranes pulsed violet with conflict. It'll condemn an entire colony plan. Better a dead rock than a dead galaxy. His eyes burned. Do it. 01:20. Knox acts. She triggered the vent. Massive conduits groaned. Steam and radiation screamed through pipes. The ground itself shook. The overload slowed. 01, 10 right arrow 01, 05 right arrow 01, 00 held. Knox sagged with relief until the console flared red again. Manual lock required, reactor chamber. Her membranes blanched. Marcus, the system requires a manual lock. Someone has to go inside, and it's lethal. Bailey wiped blood from his mouth. His smile was raw, brutal. Guess that's me. Knox seized his arm. You'll die. He looked at her with eyes that held no fear. Better me than you, better me than everyone. 00:45. Part 6 cliffhanger. Bailey staggered toward the reactor chamber door, fists clenched, blood dripping. The chamber glowed white-hot, the air shimmering with lethal radiation. Knox's claws hovered over the console, membranes trembling. She could override the lock and force the door shut. Save him, doom the station, or open it. Send him to certain death, save everyone else. 00:30. Her heart slammed in her chest. Bailey glanced back once. That terrible human smile cut through the haze. Council banned our weapons, he rasped. They forgot our will isn't one they can ban. The door hissed open. White light poured out. Bailey stepped inside. The reactor chamber blazed like the heart of a star. White light burned across metal catwalks, shadows writhing like living things. Radiation monitors screamed. Marcus Bailey walked into hell. Knox's membranes pulsed white with terror as she watched through the glass. His body was already blistering, sweat turning to steam, but he didn't hesitate. He staggered to the manual override wheel. The steel glowed hot. His bare hands gripped anyway, skin sizzled. He pulled. The lock. 00, 20 right arrow 00, 19 right arrow 00, 18. The wheel resisted, frozen by heat and pressure. Bailey roared, veins bulging, arms trembling. His grip tore open, blood spattering across the glowing steel. Knox screamed through the intercom. Marcus, stop, you'll die. He didn't stop. He braced his body, slammed his shoulder into the wheel, and dragged it inch by inch. 00, 12 right arrow 00, 11 right arrow 00, 10. His hands were raw meat. His uniform smoked. He screamed, a primal sound that shook Knox's hearts to their core. The wheel snapped into place. The overload countdown froze. 00:09. The chamber groaned as pressure vented harmlessly into the planet's atmosphere. The glow dimmed. The alarms fell silent. The station lived. But Bailey collapsed. He collapsed to the floor, body twitching, skin blistered, breath ragged. Knox tore the override panel open, slammed her claws across it, and forced the chamber doors wide. Radiation scorched her membranes as she stumbled in, dragged his limp body out. Marcus, she gasped, her voice raw, stay awake. His eyes flickered open. They were still sharp, still alive, barely. His lips pulled into that terrible human smile. "See," he whispered, voice shredded. "Didn't need weapons." Then his eyes rolled back. Extraction. Engines thundered outside. Human drop shuttles. Armed Marines in black combat suits stormed the station, weapons ready. They swept up the unconscious council troops like trash, secured the corridors, and moved with practiced precision. A medic dropped beside Knox, scanning Bailey's ruined body. "Severe burns, organ trauma, radiation poisoning. We need to evac now." Knox clutched his wrist. "Save him." The medic's eyes, human eyes, hard but kind, met hers. "We'll try, but don't expect miracles." They lifted Bailey onto a stretcher and rushed him aboard. Political firestorm. 3 rotation cycles later, Knox stood once more in the Grand Council chamber. This time she wasn't alone. The chamber buzzed with tension as Admiral Helena Foster, Earth's highest-ranking officer in Council space, stood at the dais. Silver hair, uniform crisp, voice cold as steel. "Honorable representatives," she began, "your security units attempted to exterminate a human diplomat and a council researcher. They sabotaged a reactor. They nearly killed tens of thousands on Terrace IV." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Denials followed, Krell delegates clicking furiously, Zentury flashing colors of outrage. Foster silenced them with one raised hand. "We have recordings, biometrics, witness testimony." Knox stepped forward, her membranes pulsed with controlled fury. "I was there. I saw Marcus Bailey fight for my life, for all our lives. He bled to stop a council-sanctioned massacre." The chamber filled with pheromones of shame, denial, fear. First Speaker Vorlat struck the resonance plate weakly. His carapace looked dull, aged. "These actions were unauthorized." Foster cut him off. "Don't insult us, you ordered it. Humanity accepts the truth, you fear us." She leaned forward, her voice ablade. "But understand this, fear will not chain us. You banned our weapons, so we used our hands. If you try again, we will use everything." The chamber fell silent. The vote. The council convened in emergency session. Hours passed in heated debate, accusations hurled, alliances tested. At last, the vote was called. The weapons ban on humans, rescinded. A Joint Security Council, approved. Cultural Combat Exchange Program, mandated. For the first time, humans sat as equals. Knox exhaled, membranes quivering. She had risked her life, her career, her species' trust. But humanity had forced the galaxy to see them as they were, not monsters, not tools, survivors, allies. Recovery. Later in the human medical wing, Knox stood at Bailey's bedside. His body was wrapped in regenerative foam, machines breathing for him. She touched his hand gently. "You saved them all, even those who tried to kill you." His eyes flickered open, faint but alive. His voice rasped. "That's the point." Knox's membrane softened. "You're a fool." His lips twitched into that brutal smile. "Yeah, a human fool." Epilogue, a new era. 1 cycle later, Knox watched from the observation dome of a new training facility orbiting Nexus Station. Dozens of species sparred together, humans teaching throws to Zentury, Drax learning locks from judo masters, even Krell practicing disarms. Admiral Foster stood beside her, arms folded. "You see, no more secrets, no more surprises." Fear turned into understanding. Knox nodded slowly. "The Council banned human weapons, but in doing so, they forced you to reveal your true strength." Foster glanced down at the training floor where Marcus Bailey, scarred but alive, demonstrated a joint lock to a group of wide-eyed aliens. His movements were slower now, but still precise, still unstoppable. "Our strength," Foster said softly, "was never in our weapons. It was in our hands, in our will, in our refusal to die quietly." Knox's membranes pulsed with quiet awe. They tried to make humans less dangerous. Instead, they made them unstoppable. She turned to Foster. "What will the Council do when they realize what they've unleashed?" Foster's smile was grim. "Pray they never find out the answer." Final line. The Council had banned human weapons. So humanity used its hands. And the galaxy would never forget the brutality and mercy of that choice.